I slept at my friend's house and we weren't allowed to leave the bedroom after 9 p.m. I soon found out why. We had been friends for 13 years, and in all that time, I had never once slept over at his house. So, why the sudden invite? I asked, shifting the duffel bag on my shoulder as he held the door open for me. My parents are going out, he said quickly. Figured it's about time you saw my humble abode. The house was anything but humble. It was a large white clapboard structure that stood like a relic, as though the town had grown up around it. Towering old oaks loomed around the yard, casting long shadows across the grass. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and age, along with something else I couldn't place, like the scent of soil after a heavy rain. His mother was a delicate woman with nervous energy. She smiled constantly, but the smile never quite reached her eyes. She darted around the dim rooms, offering drinks and snacks with an edge of urgency. His father, in contrast, sat silently in a leather chair. He was a large man, and his deep-set eyes followed us as we moved through the house, unblinking. I caught a low, hurried whisper from his mother to him, but I couldn't make out what she said. At exactly 7 o'clock, his parents left. So, what's the plan? I asked, dropping my bag on the floor of his room. His bedroom felt like a completely different world compared to the rest of the house. Posters lined the walls, his bed was unmade, and a console sat in front of the TV. It felt normal. It was the only room that didn't carry the strange stillness of the rest of the place. Pizza, video games, the usual, Leo said, powering up the console. He moved with forced calm, but I noticed the tension in his neck. We ate, we played, and for a while I forgot about the strange energy that lingered in the house. For a while, it was just the two of us and the sounds of digital chaos from the TV. But a little before 9, Leo paused the game. "Hey, man," he said. He didn't look at me. He just kept fiddling with the controller. "There's just one weird rule my parents have." "Weird rule?" "Yeah." He finally looked up, and his eyes were serious. "After 9 p.m., we have to be in here. In the bedroom. And we can't leave. No matter what. Not for the bathroom, not for water, nothing. The door stays shut until sunrise." I studied his face. He wasn't joking. "You're serious? What if I have to pee?" "Go now," he said flatly. He nodded toward an empty bottle on his desk. "After 9, you use that." The laugh that was building in my throat died right there. "Dude, that's kind of extreme." "Why?" He shrugged, but it was a forced gesture. "They're just really cautious. It's an old house. They think it gets drafty." "Drafty." I knew he was hiding something, I just didn't know what. Then, from downstairs, the old clock began to chime the hour, and Leo's head snapped toward the door. Bong! 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 He was up before the 9th chime had finished. He walked quickly to the door, closed it, and slid a heavy steel bolt into place. The sound echoed like a seal being locked. "There," he said, letting out a breath. Sweat dotted his forehead. "We're good." "Leo, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Nothing. Just a weird house rule," he repeated, still avoiding eye contact. He turned up the game volume until it filled the room with noise. But I couldn't focus on the game. All I could see was the door. The bolted door. And I felt something shift inside me. A cold awareness. The house was quiet again. But not the same kind of quiet. This was a listening quiet. A waiting quiet. And whatever was in the heart of that house. It was waiting with us. An hour passed, and there was still no sound from the rest of the house. Slowly, the tension seemed to drain out of Leo, and he kept playing the game with a calm that didn't quite seem natural. We continued in that strange quiet, and something began to gnaw at me, not fear, exactly, but frustration at how ridiculous the whole thing felt. "You really need to tell your parents this is how villains in documentaries get started," I joked. He offered a hollow smile. "Tell me about it." That's when the sound started. A soft, deliberate thump on the floorboards downstairs. Steady. Rhythmic. Measured. "What's that?" I whispered. Leo kept staring at the screen, his fingers moving over the controller like nothing had happened. "It's nothing. Just the house settling." "That's not the house settling, Leo." The sound stopped. In the stillness that followed, I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Then a new sound began, something dragging. A deep, scraping noise, like something heavy being pulled across the wooden floor below us. It had the sickening rhythm of a body with uneven steps. I muted the TV. "Okay, yeah. That's definitely not the house." Leo set the controller down on the carpet. His face had gone pale, the light from the screen flickering across his features. "Just ignore it, Liam. Please. It stops if you ignore it." "What? What stops? What is it?" Before he could answer, we heard it. A voice from the hallway. Soft at first. On the other side of the door. "Leo. Honey." I froze. It was his mother's voice. "Leo, sweetheart, your father and I came home early. I brought you boys some warm cookies. Open the door." I turned to look at Leo. He sat like a statue, skin gone waxy, staring at the door with eyes wide and fearful. He raised a trembling finger to his lips and shook his head slowly. "Leo, that's your mom," I whispered. "Don't be silly, sweetie. We're inside," the voice said. It was just outside the door now. "I just baked your favorites. Chocolate chip. They're getting cold." The dragging from downstairs had stopped. Now, there was only the sugary tone of that voice. But it wasn't right. There was something too perfect about it, like an impression, not the real thing. Then came the knocking. It wasn't a knock like you'd hear from someone at the door. It was soft. Wet. Like something not meant to be knocking at all was pressing itself against the wood. "Leo. Liam. Are you boys all right in there? You're being awfully quiet." I tried to mouth his name, but no sound came out. He sat on the floor, unmoving, his eyes begging. The doorknob turned, once to the left, then to the right. Then it began to shake in its socket, more and more violently. "Boys. This isn't funny," the voice said. The cheerful tone cracked, and something rough edged in. "Open the door." A heavy impact slammed into the door, and the frame groaned under the force. I scrambled backward across the floor until I hit the wall. Then the voice changed. It spoke again, but it was no longer familiar. It had become low, twisted, almost broken. There was a gurgling distortion, like something struggling to form words that shouldn't exist. "I know you're in there." The tapping began again, more urgent and erratic. With it came a strange, high-pitched whining sound, like wind leaking through a crack in the world. And from the narrow gap beneath the door, something began to seep in. A thick, black liquid. Dark as oil. Moving slowly across the floorboards. It carried with it a scent, damp earth and decay. The kind of smell you find in a place that hasn't seen light in years. Leo moved. He crawled to the bed, pulled the blankets over himself, and disappeared beneath them. A small, trembling shape in a dark room. He was gone into whatever place he went when this happened. On the other side of the door, the voice had gone silent. But I knew it was still there. I felt it. It hadn't left. It was waiting. I kept my back pressed to the far wall, eyes fixed on the door. My breath was shallow and jittery, caught somewhere between panic and disbelief. On the bed, Leo remained a trembling bundle beneath the covers, paralyzed by something that felt all too familiar to him. For me, this was a single night of fear. For him, it was routine. A dangerous curiosity, the kind that had led me into trouble more than once, started battling the fear inside me. I had to know what was out there. Seeing it, knowing, felt less terrifying than imagining. I stepped forward quietly, the old boards beneath my socks mercifully silent. "Liam, no," came Leo's voice, muffled under the blankets. Don't look." But I had already made up my mind. I lowered myself to the floor, heart hammering in my chest, and leaned toward the keyhole. A musty, earthy scent grew stronger, the kind you might smell in an old cellar or forest after a storm. At first, all I could see was the hallway, dimly lit by a pale slice of moonlight from the window at the far end. And then, it moved into view. It wasn't human. It wasn't even animal. It was a figure made of sticks and darkness, impossibly tall and thin. Its limbs looked like they'd been taken from a winter tree, brittle and twisted. Its body was a swirl of dust and shadow, with no clear shape. It wore his mother's floral apron, stretched awkwardly over a space where a torso should be. It wore his father's hunting cap, resting atop a head that wasn't a head at all, just a swirling blot of darkness. It had no face. Just a void. In one of its twig-like hands, it held a family photo I recognized from the wall. It held that photo up where a face might go, and smiled using the frozen image of Leo's mother. It reached out with a long, blackened arm and knocked softly on the door. Thump. 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 I jolted back from the keyhole, slapping a hand over my mouth to keep the rising fear from escaping in a scream. My brain refused to fully understand what I'd just seen. That wasn't just a thing inside the house. That was the house, some kind of presence that wore stolen pieces of its own past like a disguise. Then a new voice came through the door, and my entire body tensed. "Liam. Why are you hiding in there? Your mother's really worried about you." It was my mom's voice. Not just like hers. It was hers. The exact tone she used when I was young and sick, or when she'd call me in for dinner on summer nights. It hit me like a wave of warmth and dread all at once. I wanted to go home. I wasn't home. And somewhere in the hallway, that thing chuckled, a dry, leaf-like rustle on cold stone. It knew what would get to me. "Let me in, Liam," my mother's voice whispered sweetly. "I've come to take you home." I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, trembling. I felt the flush of shame rise in me. I had almost believed it. I looked over at Leo, still hidden in the blankets. The bottle he'd given me earlier, it hadn't been a joke. It wasn't just some weird rule, it had been a small, grim act of care. A lifeline. The scraping started again, this time directly on the door. Slow, deliberate, as if something was dragging claws across the wood. All the while, it kept whispering my name in my mother's voice, promising comfort, safety, release. All lies. Time dragged on. The voice never stopped. It changed constantly, cycling through people I knew, people I didn't, voices that didn't belong to anyone at all. Some kind. Some pleading. Some broken. A whole crowd of echoes behind the door, begging to be let in. And always, scraping. Soft. Relentless. Like something sharpening itself on our fear. Eventually, my fear faded into something colder. Anger. Anger at whatever this thing was. Anger at the family that had built their life around it. And anger at the boy in the bed, who knew this horror intimately and still said nothing. The hours passed. "Leo," I said. My voice was barely more than a whisper. "Leo, wake up." There was movement from the bed. He peeked out from the pale fortress of his blankets, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "Is it gone?" he asked in a breath. "No," I said. "It's still there. And I need the truth. Right now." "What is that thing?" He flinched at my tone. Sitting up, he wrapped his arms around his knees and stared at the door. "I don't know what it is," he murmured. "We just call it the Nightman. It's always been here. As long as my family has." Then the story came, broken and low, like something he didn't want to say aloud. His great-great-grandfather had built the house on land that should have been left untouched. From the first night, something felt off. The wood, the walls, even the air had a weight to it. Something had been allowed to stay, or maybe invited. A kind of unspoken agreement. The family would have the house during the daylight. But when the clock struck 9, it belonged to something else. "It gets lonely," Leo whispered. A single tear ran down his cheek. "It likes to mimic people. Pretend. It builds itself out of whatever it finds lying around. It tries to make a body. The apron. The hat. The photo. But it's changing," he said, his voice shaking. "It used to just make sounds. But now it tries to come inside. The old rules, stay in the room, don't look, don't listen, they used to be enough. But now it wants something more." He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there chilled me deeper than the thing outside the door. Guilt. Thick and raw. It wants someone new. Something cold settled in my chest, and I understood. The sudden invitation. His parents' nervous energy. The steel bolt across the door. You brought me here for it." "No," he cried. "I didn't want to. But my parents, they said it was getting stronger. That it wouldn't be satisfied with just us anymore. They thought, if it had someone new, someone not from the family, it might stop. Just for a while. Give us a break." He had brought me here like a sacrifice, dressed in sleepover plans and video games. His parents hadn't gone out, they were here, behind their own locked door. Listening. Hoping that whatever waited in the dark would choose me. And then it all stopped. The scraping. The voices. Everything. A silence fell so deep it felt like the house itself had stopped breathing. "What's happening?" I asked quietly. Leo's eyes widened. Then from downstairs, the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, deliberate. And with them, something else. A dragging noise. Slow. Rhythmic. Like something being pulled that didn't want to move. Thump. Drag. Thump. Drag. It wasn't pretending anymore. The charade was over. The footsteps came to a halt just outside our door. 1 beat. 2. 3. Then, crack, a deafening blow hit the door. Wood splintered, and the bolt screeched against its housing. A spiderweb of cracks spread from the lock. Tiny shards of ruined wood flaked to the floor. "It's never done this before," Leo whimpered. He scrambled away into the far corner, curling up like he wanted to vanish. "It's never tried to break through." Crack. Bang. The bolt was ripped clean from the doorframe like it had been paper. The door swung inward on screaming hinges. And there, in the darkness of the hall, it stood. It had taken a form. No more shadow or suggestion. It was real now, built from pieces of the house. Floorboards for legs. Rusted pipes for arms. Its torso was a twisted cage of stair railings, and in the center of that cage pulsed something dark, something familiar. My duffel bag. Stuffed inside the heart of its body, beating like it didn't belong. Its head was the grandfather clock from the hallway. Bent and resting on a crooked neck of wood, the pendulum swinging wildly behind the cracked glass. And then it spoke. Not with one voice. With all of them. A broken choir of stolen sounds and human echoes. Time is up. The door creaked open on its broken hinges, and the thing, assembled from the bones of the house itself, stepped inside. Each movement came with the grinding of wood and metal, a terrible rhythm of creaks and groans. The room filled with the sharp scent of sawdust and something older, deeper, like the heavy earth beneath forgotten places. Leo cried out, his voice barely rising over the grinding advance of the creature. A primal fear surged through me. This wasn't the fear of being hunted by a wild thing, it was the fear of something that shouldn't exist at all. I grabbed a glass trophy from the desk and hurled it with everything I had. It struck the creature square in the clock face, shattering the glass in a burst of glittering shards. The thing recoiled. And from its broken head came a sound, like every clock in the world striking midnight at once. Loud. Endless. Final. But it gave us a second. Just one. The window. I shouted. I grabbed Leo by the arm and tried to pull him along, but he moved like he was made of stone. My fingers slipped on the window latch, slick with sweat. It didn't budge. The frame had been painted shut long ago. Behind us, the creature recovered. Its shattered clock face caught the moonlight in 100 glinting angles as it raised its rusted pipearm to strike. The bed. Help me with the bed. I yelled. Adrenaline finally lit a fire in Leo. Together, we pushed against the heavy oak frame, tipping it onto its side to form a makeshift barricade. The thing crashed into the mattress, its strange legs, made from chair legs and other household parts, tangling in the sheets. It let out a roar, not like an animal, but like the groan of collapsing timbers. Then it began to rip the bed apart with its hands, tearing through the stuffing and splinters like it meant nothing. We had nowhere else to run. The window behind us still wouldn't open. The sun, Leo gasped. His eyes were wide with desperation. It can't be outside when the sun comes up. I glanced through the window. The sky was still pitch black. There were no hints of morning yet. We didn't have hours. The creature broke free of the wrecked bed. It moved slowly now, but with confidence. It knew we had nowhere left to go. In its hand, it held something new, a claw made of silverware, forks and spoons twisted together into a gleaming, jagged edge. Then, something caught my eye behind the television. A flashlight. Not just any flashlight, a heavy-duty, high-powered beam. I dove for it, grabbing the cold metal cylinder just as the creature loomed above me. I could smell the age of it, the dust, the wood, the metal that made up its form. The brass pendulum in its broken clock head swung wildly like a hypnotic eye. My thumb found the switch. A blinding column of white light shot across the room, striking the creature full in the head. It recoiled, letting out a sound that wasn't a scream but something far stranger, like metal straining under pressure and distant echoes collapsing into static. The light didn't burn it, but it undid it. Pieces of its strange body began to fall away. The silverware hand dropped to the floor with a clatter. One of the wooden legs split and snapped. It staggered backward, shielding its face with a rusted pipe. Then it turned and melted into the shadows near the door. And in that room began the longest watch of my life. I held the flashlight like a sword, its beam the only barrier between us and the creeping dark. Leo huddled behind me, flinching each time the thing moved at the edges of the room. We guarded the light like it was life itself, standing against something vast and patient. My arm ached. The batteries were fading. And still it came, lunging forward from the shadows, testing us. I would drive it back with the beam, again and again, and we would wait, breathing in sync with the soft, unnatural sounds at the corners of the room. The hours passed in a fragile balance between the glow and the dark. And then, the beam began to flicker. "It's dying," I whispered. "Just a little longer," Leo said, eyes locked on the window. "Just a little longer." The creature sensed it. In the dimming light, it began to gather itself. As the flashlight weakened to a pale, trembling yellow, the thing rose for its final approach, silent, determined. And then, just as it surged forward with a burst of motion, a single, silver line appeared on the horizon. Dawn. The creature collided with me, and the flashlight flew from my hand. I hit the floor hard. It stood over me, its cracked clock face leaned close. In the curve of its swinging pendulum, I saw my own reflection. My own fear. Then, at last, a single, clean ray of morning sunlight broke through the window. It struck the creature's back. And everything stopped. The thing froze. The air held still. Then, one by one, its pieces began to fall away. The clock face disintegrated into fine dust. The pipe arms detached and clattered to the floor. The banisters that formed its chest untwisted, and the pieces of silverware and broken wood collapsed to the ground. My duffel bag slipped free and fell silent beside the pile. In moments, the room was still again. All that remained was a heap of ordinary objects, and a thin layer of gray dust that smelled like time long forgotten. The sunlight spread across the room, golden and soft. I lay there, chest heaving, trying to believe it was over. Leo wept against the far wall, a sound of both relief and exhaustion. We had made it. There were footsteps in the hall. Real ones. Human ones. The door to his parents' room creaked open, and a moment later they appeared in the doorway. They didn't speak. They didn't ask if we were okay. They didn't look at the destroyed furniture, or the broken bed, or the dust that coated the floor. They looked at me. And in their eyes, I didn't see gratitude. Only disappointment. The danger had not passed. I realized then that the plan hadn't worked. The thing in the house had not been satisfied. No offering had been accepted. It would return the next night. Still hungry. I was the one who survived. And for that, they would never forgive me.